afternoon.
Hi, Tony. Good to see you.
How are you?
Of course, we were hoping to see you live on stage, but I know that you had a situation where last minute you've not been able to make it, but it's good to have you still with us.
Great to be with you.
And I hope that we can have a great conversation over the next maybe 20, 25 minutes. Firstly, Tony, thank you so much for accepting our invitation to Be at Hope 2025. I know I met you in June of last year
Yes.
when at the NYU conference, and I invited you, and you were most gracious to accept our invitation. So thank you so much. It's a privilege and an honor to have you here. So
Well, it's wonderful to be part of the event. Thank you for the invitation.
You're always welcome, and we look forward to sort of having you live on stage maybe next year. But let's dive straight into the session. In 2 years' time, Marriott is going to complete 100 years of its existence from the first root beer stand, which came up in 1927, set up by John Williard Marriott. I don't think many people in our audience know that Marriott started as a restaurant and a catering company, and then grew, into a hotel company when the first Marriott hotel opened in Virginia in 1957. Amazing story. I'd love you to talk a little bit about this almost 100-year journey.
Of course. Well, it is a fascinating story and really a success story built on the willingness of our founders to take significant personal risks, to build a company built on core values and stick to those core values and let those values guide them through a variety of challenges over nearly a century. But it is a fascinating story and really, I think, one defined by innovation. As you point out, J.W. Sr. was a sheep herder in the state of Utah, here in the U.S., and shortly after he was married, he and his wife, Alice, bought a Model T and drove cross country and opened the first business, a root beer stand in Washington. And during the hot, humid summer in Washington, the business thrived. When the weather turned, there was less and less demand for those frosty mugs of root beer. And Alice had studied Spanish language during college. And she actually went to the Mexican embassy, knocked on the door, introduced herself to the chef at the embassy, and he shared some recipes. And at night, she would cook hot food upstairs from the root beer stand and sell that at night, during the day in the restaurant. And so that quickly grew into our first restaurant business called the Hot Shops, which was a very successful business. During the time that business operated, J.W. Sr. noticed that more and more customers were coming into the restaurant and ordering to-go meals. And he was a very inquisitive gentleman. He asked them why, and they said, because we're starting to fly more and more and there's no food available on the planes leaving from National Airport in Washington. And so he took that understanding, there are some wonderful old black and white photographs at our headquarters of him at the bottom of the stairs of old DC-9 planes selling boxed lunches to flyers for 10 US cents. And that ended up growing into a very profitable in-flight catering company. As you point out, in 1957, the company pivoted to the hotel business. Bill Marriott tells a funny story. Mandeep, you may not know, I sit on the board of directors of McDonald's Corporation. And several years ago, when I was asked to join that board, Bill Marriott's comment to me was, well, let them know they're the reason we're in the hotel business. And I said, why do you say that? And he said, when the first McDonald's restaurant opened in Washington, D.C., Bill and his father went and had lunch. He said the food was great, the service was great, and McDonald's was charging 15 cents for a hamburger, while Hot Shops was charging 50 cents. And he said, they're going to put us right out of business. We better pivot. And so that's when we moved into the hotel business with our first hotel in Virginia. But even as we moved into lodging, I think it's a history punctuated by points of innovation. It was Bill Marriott that went to American Airlines and said, I understand you use a very sophisticated demand forecasting, dynamic pricing model. I'd like to learn more about that and figure out if it has applications in lodging. He was the first to really think about a multi-tiered brand strategy with the rollout of Courtyard. He really advanced the idea of loyalty in lodging. So just a terrific innovation that I hope continues even today as we approach that 100-year anniversary.
Wow, that's some story and
Sure
very, very inspiring. And look at what it turned out to become the world's largest hotel company. And you've had an absolutely record year. You've added 123,000 new rooms. And what is astounding is 577,000 rooms in the pipeline.
Yes.
But this is, of course, something that happened in the last year. But you've also seen all the trials and the tribulations with 9/11, GFC, COVID, and COVID when RevPARs were down by 90%. You've seen it all, so it'll be interesting to tell us how did you manage all this crisis? What does it take for a leader to manage these crises?
Yeah, it's, I think a few things. I talked at the outset as I described the history of the founding of the company about these 5 core values that our founders developed. The ideas of putting people first, pursuing excellence, embracing change, acting with integrity and serving our world. And when the company has faced the sort of crises you described, the impact of 9/11 on the travel sector, the impact of the great financial crisis, certainly the impact of the pandemic, which in many ways was an existential threat to the travel and tourism sector, it was those core values that guided our decision making. As I reflect back, particularly on the first 7 weeks, as the crisis unfolded around the globe, the most immediate challenge was liquidity. And that challenge was exacerbated by the fact that we really didn't know what we were solving for. Did we need to ensure liquidity to survive a week, a month, a year, a decade, forever? But we knew liquidity was critical. And so in those first 7 weeks, I thought the leadership team did an amazing job of threading the needle in the US public markets and getting a bond deal done. Renegotiating all of the covenants on our revolver so that we were able to pull down over $4 billion of capacity on that revolver. Negotiating advanced point sales with our credit card partners, American Express and JP Morgan Chase. And the combination of those quick actions created almost $8 billion of liquidity, which gave the company, I suppose, a bit of breathing room. And with that breathing room, almost immediately, with the guidance of generational leaders like Bill Marriott and Arne Sorensen, we had the ability to start looking towards recovery. We had this innate sense that we would get through the pandemic, and when we did, people would recognize how much they had missed travel. And so we focused on cleanliness in the hotels, cleaning protocols, operating protocols. We shifted a lot of attention to how our owners and franchisees would navigate the extraordinary financial duress that was created by the pandemic. And thankfully, as we've all seen, our instinct was right, and the demand for travel came roaring back.
What an interesting, resilient story that is, Tony. But let's move on a little, and you've sort of moved beyond the traditional hotel business with your new launch of the Ritz-Carlton Yacht Collection. That's an interesting development. And I believe the 3rd luxury yacht, Luminara, is now going to be sailing soon in the Mediterranean and in Asia.
That's correct.
I'm very interested in knowing that are we going to see a Ritz-Carlton yacht sailing through Mumbai very soon?
Well, I certainly hope so. I know the Ritz-Carlton Yacht Collection team is very energized about our 3rd ship making its way to Asia. As I'm sure we'll talk about, India is such an extraordinary set of destinations. And when we look at that luxury customer, what they look for is new destinations, authentic destinations, destinations with rich history and rich cuisines. And to be sure, India checks all of those boxes, so I would hope so. But I think that the expansions we've made, whether it's Marriott Homes and Villas, whether it's the Ritz-Carlton Yacht Collection, we made an announcement earlier this week about the expansion of our Safari Lodge portfolio in Africa. I think what all those point to is a desire to ensure that our portfolio can satisfy every lodging need for every trip purpose, everywhere our 230 million Bonvoy members want to travel. And their desires and their expectations of an ever-increasing universe of travel options is really what guides a lot of our expansion strategy.
Which is interesting, and I'd like to move on to India from here. Tony,
Sure.
when I was in the NYU conference, I attended a session where the 5 top global CEOs were on stage. You were obviously there. And this was a session to talk about what's happening globally and how are all the big CEOs looking at this. And interestingly, the 40-minute session, the first 20 minutes, everyone was talking only about India. And that was very intriguing for me in the audience when I was sitting in New York, in the heart of the United States, and the global CEOs were talking about India. So I'm going to ask you, Tony, you obviously have a very good footprint in India. But in the larger picture, given the number of hotels, more than 9,000 hotels across the globe, India is still small, right, in size. But how are you, given your position and given from where you are viewing the world, what is it that you think about India? Do you think that the inflection time for India has come, or do you think that it is still early days?
Yeah, we're very bullish on India, and to your point, while perhaps small in comparison to our 2 largest markets, the US and Greater China, I've been with Raj and Ranju and the team in India this week, and one of the things we've been talking about is in the not too distant future, India will become Marriott's 3rd largest market globally. We've got 155 operating hotels today, well over 100 in the pipeline today. We had all-time record signings last year. Kieran and his team did a terrific job with our partners across the country. And so we see extraordinary momentum in India. And I think there's a few drivers. Number one, India benefits from really extraordinary advantages from a demographic perspective. And we all read a great deal about many destinations around the world that have significant demographic headwinds or challenges. India has the polar opposite, a really compelling story about its demographics. Number two, when you think about the importance of and the pace of evolution of technology, India is exceedingly well positioned to take advantage of that pace of change. To me, one of the really exciting opportunities, so much of the growth and performance that we're seeing in India is really on the shoulders of domestic demand. As I've had the chance to talk to some government officials during my visit this week, one of the things we all talk about with great enthusiasm is over the next decade or two, the tremendous opportunity that exists for inbound to international. I think the forecasts that I've seen expect international arrivals in India in 2025 to be somewhere between 10 and 11 million, which is a fraction of what you're seeing in other destinations around the world. And so there is a real opportunity, I believe, to remove friction from travel, to do a better job educating global travelers about the rich history, the richness and diversity of destinations that India has to offer, to work in a public-private partnership to ease travel in and out of India, to ease travel within destinations within the country, but tremendous opportunities, we believe.
Yes, I do think that from whatever we hear, and some of the global leaders who spoke before you all seem to be very, very invested in India. And I think that India's time is now around the corner. And we've seen a lot of investment coming into India, even from global players. But let's move a little bit on the technology side, Tony. And AI seems to be the buzzword now, anywhere and everywhere you go. And everyone has you believe that the world is going to change and going to change fairly dramatically with the sort of onset of AI and how it's going to, develop over the next maybe 10 to 20 years. Tell me a little bit about what your views are on AI and how that's going to play in our sector in hospitality.
So as you're probably aware, we're going through a very significant technology transformation at Marriott, which includes updates of our three most important systems: our reservation system, our property management system, and our loyalty platform. AI will most certainly play a meaningful role in the rollout of each of those new systems. But when I think about technology and travel-related technology innovation, to me, the word that is most important is capacity. And the reason I say that, I'll tell you a quick anecdote. I had a group of MIT graduate students visit our headquarters in Washington. And I did about an hour Q&A with these very bright students. And one of them raised his hand and said, with all the advances in robotics and machine learning and artificial intelligence, can you envision a day in the future where you have the opportunity to operate a hotel with no employees? And I grinned and I said, I certainly hope not. And I reminded him that certainly from Marriott's perspective, we are in the hospitality business, and the hospitality business is a people-to-people business. But what I think technology and AI can do is create capacity for our associates, and every minute of capacity that is created by the efficiencies that emerge from these technologies, that's a minute they can better engage our guests in a very personal way. On the AI front, I had a chance to visit our customer engagement center here in Delhi just yesterday. And as I talked to our agents, one of the things that becomes clear, travelers are becoming more and more sophisticated as they think about planning travel. And with a portfolio of about 9,300 hotels, we would not be setting up our agents for success without arming them with the power of AI. Correct. And so the type of inquiries they get from our guests are quite interesting. They have a guest call and say, I'm planning a multi-generational vacation. I want to be at a beach. I want to be within 20 minutes of an airport. I want a hotel that has both a Japanese and an Italian restaurant. And because of the size and configuration of my family, we're going to require at least 4 two-bedroom suites. With that set of parameters, you can imagine the challenges absent AI for our agents trying to navigate a portfolio the size and scale that Marriott offers. With AI, they can evaluate almost instantaneously and offer a wide range of options to that very demanding guest.
Yeah, surely that's going to be the future. Let's talk, before we end, let's talk a little bit about Bonvoy and 230 million, the largest sort of, program in the hospitality sector, loyalty program. It's turning a little experiential, isn't it? Bonvoy is now about probably, if you're wanting to walk the red carpet on the Emmys, or you want to be at a Formula One race, or you want to be at a Coldplay concert. So is this pivoting into a sort of a one-stop travel shop, for the discerning traveler, that you can expect things that you haven't expected in the past? How is this evolving?
To be sure, our aspiration is for our relationship with our members to continue to evolve. If you go back in history to when these programs were created, they were quite transactional in their early days. They were there to allow guests to earn points and redeem those points for stays. And that remains a critical foundation, certainly of Bonvoy, and I think of all of the programs across the industry. The opportunity we see, however, is, to your point, to really move to experiences. And with the breadth of relationships that Marriott enjoys, the ability to make those unique once-in-a-lifetime experiences available to our members, and to leverage partnerships we have to really cater to every generation of member that we have. As we've continued to try to grow the membership, one of the things we will do is talk to our front desk agents. And to the extent somebody checks into a Marriott hotel and is not a member, they are certainly offered the opportunity to join. And one of the things that I've been quite curious about, when someone says, no, thank you, I'd like to understand why. There's obviously no expense. What sort of reaction do you get from that guest? And one of the things we often hear, I don't travel that frequently yet. Maybe I'm early in my career. And I worry that it's going to take me too long to earn points for a redemption. Hearing that from prospective new members causes us to think about some of the promotions we do, like 1-point drops, and also makes us think, how do we leverage partnerships like the one we have now with Starbucks to allow for a more immediate redemption opportunity, where even a less frequent traveler member looks and says, there's real value here to me, to membership in the Bonvoy platform. So it is, to be sure, an aspiration. We'll continue to work very hard every day to offer more and more opportunities for engagement with the platform, but I'm quite excited about the momentum we have today.
Tony, let's move to a bit of a lighter side of the conversation.
Okay.
And I'm putting you in a hypothetical situation.
Sure.
If you were riding in an elevator in one of your Marriott hotels, and there was a guest venting some shortcoming in his or her experience, not knowing who you are, how would you respond?
Well, I would absolutely introduce myself. I would absolutely thank them for staying with us. And I would engage to try and understand where we were falling short. It goes back to my earlier comment. We are in the hospitality business. And in point of fact, in late 2024, I actually sent a letter to all 9,000 of our general managers. And I won't bore you with the details, but the overarching theme of that letter, I said, we've got some really smart folks at headquarters, and those folks spend lots and lots of time developing strategies and initiatives and all sorts of opportunities to move the company forward. And none of that matters if our general managers are not inspiring their teams every day to provide warm, genuine care to every guest that is walking through our doors. And so I need our frontline associates to do that. I need our leaders in the field to do that. And if I found myself in the scenario that you described, I would expect myself to do the same thing to ensure we're providing that warm and genuine care to all of our guests.
So you operate both hotels, and of course you also operate the homes and villas as well, right? Which is now a business that
Yes.
that you're investing a lot in India as well. I just want to ask you, on a personal vacation with family and friends, what's the preference, a hotel or a homestay or a villa?
Yeah, I love hotels. I mean, I just celebrated my 30th anniversary with the company. On the long list of privileges of having been affiliated with this great company for so long, I get the opportunity to visit hundreds of hotels every year. And there is something about the energy in our hotels, the warmth and the enthusiasm of our associates, that to me really enhances the vacation experience. So while our homes and villas are terrific, I think I would always choose a hotel stay.
All right, with that note, Tony, thank you so much for finding the time to do this. I know that you're in India, and I know that you were scheduled to be here on stage. And I know that your visit to India has had a minor setback, but I wish you well for the rest of your travel in India. I hope you have a great experience, and we shall catch up again soon. Thank you so much, Tony. Ladies and gentlemen,
Well,
Tony Capuano.
thank you for having me.